Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/Entitled People. In today's episode, deadbeat brother crashed my Crown Victoria. Gets a night in jail he won't forget. Parents were sour at me for making my brother pay me back for damaging my car. Now my father is in jail. Update: my parents were sour at me for making my brother pay for the damage he caused to my car. Now karma is hitting them hard. Brother stole and crashed my Crown Vic, and father beat up random person. Final update. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. Deadbeat brother crashed my Crown Victoria. Gets a night in jail he won't forget. I 21M have an older brother Dave, fake name, that has always been a jerk to me. There's only a 1-year gap between us. But he liked to beat me up when we were kids, and he always acted like anything that was mine was also his. He was also somewhat the golden child, which made me miserable. So no surprise I moved out at 18. My uncle is a now retired police officer, and he took me in after I left home. He even hooked me up with a decommissioned Crown Vic. I absolutely love that car. I don't know why, but Dave hated the fact I had that car. He drove 3 beater cars into the ground while my Crown Vic kept chugging along. Well, after his 3rd beater finally died when he drove it into a pole, he asked to borrow my car. I had a bad feeling and said I wasn't gonna do that. He called me entitled and said he needed a car to get to work. I told him to take the bus because I know how he drives and my Crown Vic was off limits. My parents called me after that and told me to just lend him my car. I said I won't no matter what they say. I rely on the car and need it as well since it's my personal transportation. Dave wasn't the only one in the world with a job he needed to get to. My uncle congratulated me for standing up to them and gave me a high five. A few days later, when I got off work, the car wasn't where I parked it. I called my brother's cell, but he didn't pick up. Then I called my parents and asked them if he took my car. They denied it. So I said I was gonna call the cops, and then they admitted he'd borrowed it because he needed it. I told them he better bring it back right now or I'll have police looking for him. They called me a jerk and then phoned Dave to bring my car back. He showed back up in the parking lot in my car 20 minutes later. I demanded to know how he stole my car, and he held up a set of police Crown Vic keys he'd bought online. Some were made universal. I told him if he ever stole my car again, I'd have him arrested. Then he had the audacity to ask for a ride home. I told him he made me wait in the December cold after stealing my car so he could walk. He called me a jack and dollar before I drove away. After that, my uncle installed a tracking device in the car. When Christmas Day came, I was celebrating with family like every year. The roads were cold and icy, so I had to be very careful while driving. By now you're probably clued in on the title. Yeah, Dave borrowed my car again during the Christmas party. Apparently he decided he was gonna go pick up a friend and figured I wouldn't notice. But I did when I looked out the front window and saw my car was missing. I pulled up the tracking app and saw he was a few miles away. Then called his cell to yell at him. Everyone in the party saw this and asked what was going on. I said Dave stole my car again. And my uncle confirmed it wasn't the first time. Dave told me over the phone to screw off and he'd be back soon. I said he better not have been drinking. But he just hung up on me. Well, while I was watching the tracker app, the dot stopped and didn't move for a while. Soon we got a panicked call from Dave asking for help. He'd crashed the car because he couldn't handle the icy roads and he wasn't used to a rear-wheel drive vehicle. So we piled in my parents' minivan and followed the tracker. We found Dave by the road and my Crown Vic nose deep in a snow-filled ditch. My uncle was furious as it was formerly a car of his department. And I was mad as hell at Dave for stealing my car again. My parents wanted me to let it go. But I said enough was enough and was gonna call police. Dave begged me not to because he really had been drinking before he set off and would get a DUI. I said he was gonna pay me back for my damned car then or I'd sue him. Well, as luck would have it, police were already aware of the accident and were driving in to check on the scene. Someone else had called them, I guess. My parents tried to say that I was the one driving the car and they were just there to help me. I said that wasn't true, and my uncle backed me up. In fact, one of the cops that was there recognized my uncle and they had a chat. Then they went to Dave and asked to see his license, which I then found out was suspended after he'd crashed his previous car. Then they breath tested him. He wound up with cuffs slapped in his wrists while my mother was crying and begging the police not to take him away. But the officer just said that she and my dad could get arrested too for lying to police. That shut my parents up. And we got back in the minivan. The Christmas party was ended early and my parents drove me and my uncle home since he rode with me. They didn't say much to either of us the whole drive, and just sped away as soon as we were out of their van. They nearly slipped off the road themselves doing that. My brother was let out of jail the next day. And he looked so scared that he was practically crying. The cops there had roughed him up a bit while talking about prison and the $#N% they'd seen go on there. Dave had actually pissed himself during that and they let him take a shower. That's when my uncle started cracking up and revealed to us that his friends in the department never filed the DUI and just the charge for the suspended license, which was about a $600 fine. My uncle said he just wanted to teach Dave a lesson. And this would be the one and only time he'd ever get his help. Dave then apologized to me and said he'd pay to have my Crown Vic fixed and would never touch it again. When it got pulled out of the ditch, the front end damage was actually minor. It needs a new front bumper, a headlight, and a grille. The damage was just superficial, thankfully. My parents have pretty much glossed over the whole incident and act like it didn't happen. Dave gave me the extra Crown Vic keys he'd bought online and said this has taught him a lesson he won't soon forget. Edit, okay guys. I'm kinda tired of so many griping about how my uncle broke the law by keeping my brother's DUI from ever being filed. I did not consent to that. I did not want him to do it. But by the time I found out, it was already done. My uncle isn't a bad person. He was actually a great cop that believed in people getting second chances. And he was thanked for that many times. Last year I saw a random man recognize my uncle and thank him for putting him on the straight and narrow some years ago. My uncle also detests racism, as do I. I won't deny the cover-up of the DUI by the department was wrong. And I have no idea how they did it. But it's already done. I no longer care about that. My brother willingly paid in full for the repairs to my car. And he's keeping out of trouble. I know he could have hurt or killed someone. That much is obvious. But he didn't. My parents should have been arrested for lying to police too. But they weren't. But my father was arrested later anyway because he attacked a man after being called out as a narcissist. And now that situation is what is currently going on. What happened with my brother is basically done now. My father trying to cave a man's face in, I'd say, is far more important at the moment than something that happened weeks ago. I've already heard it all in the comments about police corruption, needing to get my car rekeyed or have the locks changed, or several other measures. I plan to have the locks changed or rekeyed when I can afford it. But I currently can't afford it. So in the meantime I'm getting a kill switch and a steering wheel club. I hope he has learned a lesson, since your parents didn't teach him anything about responsibility. My brother has always learned lessons the hard way. They didn't always stick. But none of them scared him so much he pissed himself. I think he'll stay far away from my car now. Might not stop him from trying to take other things I own in the future though. Your parents should be charged with aiding and abetting grand theft auto since they were more concerned with trying to keep their golden child out of jail or prison. If it ever happens again, I'll aim for something like that. At this point I've made it clear I'll have no problem throwing the book at any of them if they do anything like that again. And my uncle agrees. Sounds like you have a lot more stories to tell about your brother and your parents. They were infuriating just from the story alone. I can't imagine growing up with these people. I'm glad you have your uncle though. I can't believe your parents were so quick to try to throw you under the bus for your brother. I'm glad your brother learned his lesson, but I just don't think your parents will ever be the parents you need or deserve. Thank goodness you have an uncle that cares so much. I love your uncle for all the things he has done for you. You know yourself who you can count on. Stay away from the toxic part of your family. Your uncle and his friends, and you, might save your brother's life, despite y'all's parents. I don't know if he's made statements like that before, but it sounds like the talk he got in jail hit him pretty hard. Hopefully he realizes his parents can't protect him from everything and shapes up moving forward. I honestly hope that as well. But his entitlement runs deep. At least with this he may think twice about both drinking and driving, and taking someone else's car. He won't be getting a replacement car till his license suspension is over anyway. Parents were sour at me for making my brother pay me back for damaging my car. Now my father is in jail. Well, this is an update to my previous post. This all went down yesterday. My brother promised he'd pay for the damage to my car. And he kept that promise. The body shop guy cut me a deal at a fair price for replacing the damaged front end parts on my Crown Vic. He just asked if I cared whether or not they were OEM. I told him I didn't care if they were OEM as the car is far from new and I didn't need the bill to get too high. I'd thought that the damage was only cosmetic. But there was some minor damage the body shop will need to pull out. But it's not frame damage and is an easy job to straighten out, they told me. There was some minor damage to the fender panels. But they said they're easy to fix. Especially since I don't care that they aren't perfect. And the new parts will be painted in a matching color. So that's good. My brother willingly paid cash in advance to the body shop after getting the quote from them. He seemed all too eager to hand the money over and politely bid me goodbye. I won't say how much it was. But it definitely hurt his savings. Especially after the fine he had to pay for driving without a license. He was wanting to get a replacement car. But he won't have one till his license suspension is over anyway. And I don't know when that'll be. But I think it's gonna be a good while. Anyway, my parents had given my brother a ride to the body shop. And as soon as he was out the door, they stayed and admonished me for making him spend all his money fixing my car. I imagine they were about to say something about how I should have just lent my car to him to begin with, and how this all would have been prevented if I had. But something in me snapped, and I cut them off. And that's when it spilled out. I called them out on everything that came to mind. All of the favoritism. How they act like my brother has always been more important. How I had to move in with my uncle just to escape their unfair treatment. How they let my brother steal my car and then tried to lie to me until I threatened police. How they themselves tried to lie to police by saying I was the one driving when my brother crashed my Crown Vic. And so much more. And I ended it all with saying how stupid it was that they were mad at me for making my brother pay for the damage that he caused by stealing my car on Christmas Day, and driving it without a license and while intoxicated. By the time I finally stopped, I was nearly out of breath. My mother was crying. My father was red in the face and looked like he was about to explode. Then he just took my mother by the hand and started to walk out. But some guy I don't know that was sitting near the door blurted out, "You guys are narcissists." Well, that was enough to set my father over the edge as he started attacking the guy. My father is not a small man. And he knows how to throw a punch. So he started beating the crap out of the poor guy like a mad gorilla. I yelled for the clerk to call the cops. And they did. My father heard that and bolted out the door and drove off. He actually left my mother behind crying in the lobby. Police had to pick him up at home. And he surprisingly cooperated when he was arrested. But he's looking at charges for assault. The guy he beat up suffered a very swollen black eye and a possible broken nose and concussion. I was there when they were loading him into the ambulance to get him to the hospital. My mother has called me crying and blaming herself. My uncle is saying it was about time my dad tasted some karma. And my brother is doing everything he can to stay out of it. This is not how I thought this was all going to go down. Dude was right, they sound like narcissists. Bless this man for calling that shit out, but I'm so sad that he caught a beatdown for telling the truth. Good, she's blaming herself. If their actions had been better, it wouldn't have gotten there, and your father is getting karma. Actions have consequences. She will find a way to make herself the victim inevitably. Classic narcissist. I was somehow expecting again she will blame it on OP. But yeah, she is only playing victim here. But will you, Dad, learn? Why is your mother pestering you about blaming herself? I am sorry you went through that. My father was arrested before in his youth. But he's always had a temper. And I've seen him get into fist fights a few times as a kid. Somehow nothing ever came of it. But he's really done it now. I have no idea how hard this will come down on him. As for my mother, I don't know if she's truly sorry, or if she's just looking for validation through tears. The only one that seems to be true to theirself in this matter is my brother. Because he wants nothing to do with this new drama. My uncle tells me not to worry, and to just let the chips fall where they will. Whatever that means. Brother still should have gotten that DUI charge. I agree with you, but from the story it does seem like brother learned a lesson. With the advantage of hindsight, I'd let it slide. Reading your previous post made me wish your father had the same scare your brother did. Maybe he would have turned out more humble and patient. Hopefully, this whole mess will be your brother's turning point. Here's hoping. Good luck. I doubt it. Father is probably hardwired like this. Brother is wired normally, but was conditioned to be like that. Well, that was unexpected turn. Your uncle is right, let the chips fall where they may. At the very least, your father needs anger management to pay a fine and the other guy's medical bills. Whether there are further consequences is up to the courts. But your brother is getting a look into what his life can turn into if he's willing to change it now. So maybe some good will come from this mess. Paying for the medical bills of the guy he hurt is the least of his worries. The beating he gave that poor guy has a chance of putting him in jail for years. Plus he's likely to get sued now. And if all that happens, I just know someone will blame me for it. Thankfully though, no one else in the family seems to be siding with my parents. The incident at Christmas with Dave taking my car opened their eyes a bit. So now they're keeping their distance from my parents and brother. Of course he was cooperating with police. Narcissists want to be seen in a good light with authority so they can attempt to get on their good side. Well, this might make me sound like a really petty and cruel person, but if I had been you and had been called up by mom who were crying saying everything was her fault, I'd have said, yeah it is, and hung up. Hopefully your brother learns from all of this, and good on you for standing up for yourself and calling them out on everything they've done, letting them know that you won't let it slide. Glad your car is getting fixed too. Believe me, I considered that. I didn't gaslight her. And I didn't console her either. I just let her cry and talk for a while. Then I pretended I was out of time and hung up. Update: my parents were sour at me for making my brother pay for the damage he caused to my car. Now karma is hitting them hard. Well, my father is out of jail now. And I'm told he looks like crap. My mother paid his bail, and he came out looking nearly as beat up as what he did to the guy he attacked. Apparently, he picked a fight while in jail over the weekend and got swarmed by other people there. My uncle went with my mother when my father was let out and described to me what he looked like. He said he's got 2 black eyes, dark bruises everywhere, a fat lip, and he's missing a tooth. My uncle said he didn't try to blame anything on me. In fact, he barely talked. Just got in the minivan with my mother and went home. And I did manage to get in contact with the guy my father beat up. A friend of a friend knows him. I'll call him Dan for the sake of telling this. My father beat Dan up pretty bad. He's got a concussion from his head hitting the wall after taking several punches. His nose was indeed broken, he's in a neck brace, and he spent 2 days in the hospital. When I asked him what his plans were, he confirmed he is indeed going to be suing my father, and has already spoken to a lawyer. I told him to do what he has to do. Beyond that, I have no details on the case. My friends and I put together a gift basket for Dan. And we each put some money into it since he's not going to be able to go to work for a while. My uncle even contributed, even though he didn't have to. Dan was very thankful when we presented it to him. My mother hasn't tried to call or text me since my father was released. But my brother has told me through texts that she's still been crying a bit. And my father has remained pretty much silent since he got home and hardly leaves the couch. The last time my father was like this, he didn't speak to anyone for at least a week. But this situation is way worse than what made him go silent last time. Karma nailed him and your mom. Hope they enjoy spoiling your brother with pennies, cause that's all they will have left after Dan sues them. I'm glad you guys are looking out for him. You're a good person. I have no idea how much Dan will sue them for. But my parents will likely take a hit to their retirement savings. Keep some distance, wouldn't put it past your dad to attack you that way. He's stewing. I plan to stay far away and keep just informed enough about what is going on. I don't plan to see my parents face to face anytime soon. Right now, he's probably too sore and beaten down to stew. Maybe he can work up a slow simmer, but now that he knows he's not an invulnerable alpha male, his behavior might change. He's gone from Balto the Wonder Dog to a street cur. That's gotta hurt his self-image, and I like it. FYI, litigation is a long drawn-out process. It's criminal, so Dad's insurance company won't be involved. Due to the stressful nature of these things, I would suggest that you find a safe place to live in a place he doesn't know. A guy with a hair-trigger temper is capable of almost anything. Hate to give you this warning, but you never know. He will vilify you and blame you for all of this because he won't take responsibility for any of it. I would suggest counseling for you so that you can learn to deal with the aftermath of all this in a healthy, safe way. There's going to be guilt trips galore. Don't ride that train. I wish you all the best in this. It's so stupid that your parents trust him more than you, even though he totaled 3 cars, then stole a Vic while intoxicated and license suspended. And before that happened, he stole the Vic once before. And your parents still trust him. They do not trust him, they just love him more because they decided arbitrarily that he is the golden child and can do no wrong. I'm not so sure they trust him anymore. My father likes to look for someone to blame. And now my brother is the only other one in reach. Tell your parents you think they should settle the lawsuit sooner rather than later, because I'd be willing to put my money on Dan winning. In all honesty, your story is starting to match Krogle's stories of his evil mama bear and sister before she redeemed herself, and he had one good parent in his corner growing up. Hope your brother is starting to see the error of his ways and trying to change. That was very kind of you and your friends to give Dan the basket. I hope he nails you, Dad, with a good lawyer. Thank goodness for your uncle, and I hope you a more peaceful future. Your mom should get counseling and a divorce. Brother stole and crashed my Crown Vic, and father beat up random person. Final update. I know it's been months, but I finally have an update for everyone. The guy my father beat up is doing fine now. Other than needing to have his nose fixed, the rest of his wounds healed fine. He filed a lawsuit against my parents. And my father was initially stubborn as an ox about it and was dead set on fighting it. But he ended up changing his mind. Why? Well, for multiple reasons. The first one being someone in the middle of the night broke several of the windows on my parents' minivan. My uncle says that the police were pretty sure it was done with a BB gun. I guess that makes sense. But no culprit was found. My father replaced the windows on the van himself as he's done it before. And no one has vandalized the vehicle since. But I think whoever did it may be friends or family with the guy my father beat the shit out of. The next thing was my father was told by a lawyer that he had no chance of winning in court. There was CCTV footage, multiple witnesses, including myself, and no judge in their right mind would want to listen to my father. The last thing that made him change his mind was my mother threatened to divorce him. And I guess that was enough for him to finally surrender in mediation before the lawsuit went to full court. He settled with the guy he beat up in the mechanic shop for an amount that I haven't been able to find out as my mother won't tell me. But I'm guessing it was a lot. My father also has been forced to go to anger management as part of the agreement. I've only saw him a few times the past few months. And it's pretty obvious he's still mad at me, because he avoids looking at me and constantly looks mad. But after everything that's happened, he no longer has a way to justify his anger. Not even to himself. He just sits quietly and fumes. He's also apparently cut back on drinking a lot. Probably because that's one less expense he and my mother would have to deal with. Now on to my brother. You may all be pleased to hear that he's been working hard to mend things with me. He's moved out of our parents' house and in with a friend. He's got his license back, but no car as he can't afford one yet. Instead, he's been riding a bike to get to work. His relationship with our parents is more strained now though. After a while our father started turning his ire on my brother. He finally started blaming him for all of the shit that happened over the holidays. And our mother had to make him calm down. He's a lot calmer now since he started going to anger management. But it's obvious he still hates me. But it's not like my parents are offering to do family therapy or couples therapy with each other. And I suspect the reason why is because my father doesn't want more people telling him he's wrong. My mother, brother, and uncle all agree with that too. My father is still employed. His clientele dropped for a while, but he's back on his feet now. My mother says he wants to get a denture made at the dentist for his missing teeth. Yeah, turns out he lost more than one tooth after getting out of jail. It was just one initially. But several of his upper teeth were already in bad shape. And he had to have several of them pulled. So he's missing 6 teeth on the upper left side of his mouth now. A lot of people in my early posts chastised my uncle for keeping my brother's DUI from getting filed. And I was on the fence about that myself. My uncle read a lot of the comments, and finally after a few months said that he'll never do something like that again. No matter who it is. I agreed with him, and my brother knows too. So no one is ever gonna expect my uncle will just fix something if they get arrested. So that's my final update everyone. See you all later. P.S. Yes, my car is doing fine. It has a tracker and a kill switch now. And there have been no mechanical issues with it since it was repaired. Ah, Crown Vic dude. Don't worry, shout the car BYW, those are tough lip buggers. Glad to see it's coming round though. Sounds like dad is a lost cause. Too bad for him. At least your brother finally learned from everything and left that toxic household. Good for him. Honestly, it sounds to me like the dad was the root cause of the brother's behavior and entitlement. Once he was away from the dad's manipulation and control, the brother was able to start his journey of being a better person and a better brother. Sure, he's still got a long way to go and a lot of amends to make, but he sounds like he's making a real effort. Personally, I think the brother would really benefit from some therapy if it's possible. This should be a movie. Thanks for the update, and it's sad to see that your father still blames you for the incident even though it was his own fault for beating up that guy, and it just makes sick. It's like he can't do no wrong and he's the victim. His ass should have been sent back to jail afterwards. But I'm glad to see your brother doing well and hopes he stays out of trouble. Honestly, mom popping up out of nowhere with a newly acquired spine was an update I did not at all expect. She's admitted to me that she's thought of divorce many times after my brother and I were both grown. And I think it's one of the few things that scares my father. So she has it to her advantage. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.